Hello, animation fans, and welcome to another iAnimate podcast. I'm your host, Larry Vasquez, and this is episode number 19. And this is actually a podcast I had recorded earlier this year, around March-ish, shortly after the release of Wreck-It Ralph on DVD and Blu-ray. And I do apologize to my guests here for the late release. Just had some other podcasts that we had to kind of fit in. But we're getting it out here, and this has actually turned out to be a really good podcast with three of our guys, Rosco Stefanovic, Daniel Klug, and Joey Brown, who have all been iAnimate members / alumni and who worked on Wreck-It Ralph as well as Disney's yet-to-be-released Frozen. And one of the things I felt like made this interview particularly interesting was the fact that all three of them came to Walt Disney Animation Studios from kind of a different route, so to speak, and you'll hear that from the interview here. And just able to kind of pick their brains a little bit on some of their workflow, how it's changed since they've been in the studios, what they learned from iAnimate as they went into the studios, and just a lot of really cool nuggets as far as working at Walt Disney Animation Studios. And so I'm sure you'll enjoy this podcast. So without further ado, I'll start it up. First off, I'd like to thank you guys for joining us, though. I know with your guys' schedules, particularly with the studio and stuff, like you guys can get any free time you have. I know it's your time, so I really do appreciate you guys jumping in with me here tonight. So thank you very much.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Well, tell you what, I want to go through each one of you guys as a little bit of an intro, so that way those who are listening can kind of get a little bit of your voices and can associate the name with the voice here. And I think, Daniel, you and I are going to be the ones that don't have the accents, so you can go off first.
Awesome. Easy accent.
Yeah.
I'm Daniel Klug, and I'm an animator. What are we?
Some of your background.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I've been in the commercial industry, I guess, for the last eight years, and then wanted to bite the big one, and so I did all the online schools and ended up hitting my job at Rhythm and Hughes, working on Hop, and then transitioned right into Alvin and the Chipmunks 3 and made it sing so well that Disney liked me, so they picked me up for Ralph. So I've been here ever since.
Awesome. All right. Joey.
Yeah, that's right. So Joey Brown, that's me, and I'm an assistant animator at Disney, and I've been here just over a year now, and I started in the talent development program, which is traineedom, I guess. And before that, I worked at Aardman for a year in the commercials division, and while I was working there, I was doing iAnimate on the side, so I did 3 semesters of it. And before that, I just had a couple of little jobs in London out of high school.
And I want to talk about some of that as well as we kind of go through, but so I appreciate you bringing that up. Rosco, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and kind of bring up your background?
Yeah, Rosco. You don't bother pronouncing my last name.
Come on, you got to pronounce it then.
There's not much of a background, really. I mean, I have a rich background, but it has nothing to do with animation. I'm a little bit older than your average, I guess, animation mentor / iAnimate student. So my sort of backgrounds were in business and IT. On a whim, I decided to switch to animation at some point. I'm just kidding. So I did a short stint of animation mentor and then jumped ship when Jason started and finished iAnimate and just started here right before I finished iAnimate.
And then, so you've been there about a year as well? Not quite.
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, probably about 10 months.
Okay.
Something like that. Yeah.
Coming up on that.
Animation assistant as well.
Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of bring all three of you on is because you guys have a commonality with having taken some education here, obviously at iAnimate, but also the different kind of the route, so to speak, that you guys are all three there now at Walt Disney, and kind of how you guys have all came into those different perspectives. And so that's why when I appreciate you talking about, I don't have much of a background in animation, that's what's I think going to be unique for you to be able to kind of talk about in your journey there. So we'll get into some of that there. Joey, you mentioned that you had spent a little bit of time in Aardman. I think from your vantage point, from what I kind of gathered, you didn't have a whole lot of animation before you came to iAnimate, correct?
No, I was really young. I think I was 19 when I started, and I went to Vancouver Film School, so I did a 6-month course there, and animation was just kind of one partition of making a short animated film. And I'd never really animated before that, and simultaneously was learning, and I just fell in love with the whole. I was just captivated by what it entailed, and just a release from feeling sort of creatively stifled almost. And so then I was going to university after Vancouver Film School. It was something I was doing in my gap year, but I just decided not to, and it felt it was a feasible career option that didn't require a degree. So I went straight to iAnimate and kept learning. And yeah, I think that's what initially I enjoyed so much about it, was that it was just like a real chance to, I guess, express, and the assignments were really loose, and you were just allowed to just kind of do what you wanted. And I had Mike Walling, who was really helpful initially and helping me achieve what I wanted to, and it was just a really organic process.
Yeah, one of the things out to our listeners here is I've had the opportunity to have a class with each one of these three guys here. And so I've kind of got to see some of their progress throughout their time here at iAnimate. And so I had Joey in our very first class with Mike Walling, and to get to see when he says that it was a chance for him to be expressive, you have no idea. And so we'll definitely try to see if we can get some of his shots in our show notes to show.
It's a bit odd.
I tell you what, they were definitely some of the most fun and cracked my kids up. Okay. So yeah, we do appreciate that. And I think that's part of, if I look at some of your guys' strengths, and maybe I'll try to kind of express some of that, I think one of your strengths was definitely the ability to really think outside of the box, to really kind of be entertaining in that regards. I remember, and I've shared here on a couple of the podcasts, a quote from, I don't know if it was Ollie Johnson or one of the guys, but had said something to one of the guys that basically he had great animation, but it didn't entertain him. And the idea of animation was not just hitting something correctly, but the idea of entertainment. And I definitely think that was one of your strengths here.
All right. Yeah, because, I mean, iAnimate is regimented, obviously, but it's kind of, I mean, I sort it out as a tool almost to just, I don't know, just sort of experiment and have fun. And I think that's kind of the best. I'm so glad I approached it in that manner. And I think applying for here, I think that's why Disney kind of took a chance with me and brought me over, was just because I was doing stuff a bit different, maybe.
Right. That's all the entertainment value, huh?
Yeah, maybe.
Now, Rosco, I think that partly, if I were to look at your experience at iAnimate, is one of your strengths was the ability to really execute animation well. I remember seeing some of your stuff in the very first couple of workshops, and I've talked about this on some of the other podcasts, just talking about seeing people when they first started posting some of their work and just kind of being blown away and really thinking that I would, as a fellow student, would have to really up my game. And I remember seeing some of your stuff come out there and just seeing that ability to really nail, because it was the body mechanics workshops at the beginning there. And I saw that same stuff carry over into your acting ones, the ability to really, whether you struggled with the acting portion or not, to be able to get your idea there and animate it well. How has that kind of helped transition for what you're doing now over at Walt Disney Animation Studios?
Well, it had helped some, but I still have a ton to learn about entertainment, which counts here more than anything else, I would say. I would say entertainment and appeal would probably be the highest priority. So the whole experience here has been a challenge, mainly because coming from no experience and just really having to learn a lot. And obviously you learn a lot doing your courses, doing your workshops, but that only prepares you to a certain level. But then you really have to take ownership of what you're doing. So yeah, it's been challenging.
And now your journey there to Walt Disney was a little bit different, where, like you're saying, you didn't have a whole lot of experience, but I think that was partly, I guess, kind of where I was going with your ability to really shine in animation, and they were willing to take a chance on you, and a guy who really didn't have a whole lot of experience prior, and willing to pull you on to a position there. And kind of like you mentioned at a phone conversation with you and I, in the kind of heat of Ralph, right?
Because when I started, I think it was the first week of the full-on crunch, and that was in beginning of April. So I guess it was baptism by fire situation. So yeah, my first experience was that 6 months of crunch.
Well, I definitely want to kind of come back to that as well, just your experience there. Daniel, I think having looked at our class with Jamal, one of the things I think I most admired about you was your ability to be persistent. And I think that was kind of a key characteristic that I saw in your animation. From week to week, you would be able to pull in, you had some experience, like you mentioned, with working on Hop and Alvin. So you weren't as green in that regards coming to iAnimate, but it seemed like you were still able to produce good work in our workshops. But Jamal, for lack of a better term, he just wasn't quite happy with it. It wasn't quite there. And to see you week in, week out, just being able to tweak it and to fine tune it, I think what I got from being a fellow student from you was just that tenacity to continue to work at it. And that's what I've kind of seen from your strengths here as well.
Oh, yeah, Jamal was tough. That was one of the most tough teachers. Yeah, to be honest, like I did iAnimate while I was at Rhythm Hughes because I knew that I wasn't good enough really to really stand apart from a lot of the just great talent out there. So I had to stay in school and just keep pushing and keep pushing. That's pretty much all I can do, really. I'm just learning something new pretty much every day from someone else. I mean, I was even doing iAnimate in between Ralph and Frozen in the downtime in between, and it was super rough because work kicked up again right away, and then I didn't even come out with a finished shot. But Ken Fountain was able to teach me a lot about just sequence work, and so yeah, I'm a perpetual student. I'm always learning.
And that's, I guess, what I'm kind of getting at. And that's one of the things that I love about iAnimate and guys like you, because my wife had asked one time, she said, well, and I don't know if it was you in particular, but just kind of that same idea was, if they're working in the studios, why are they at iAnimate? I mean, isn't that the goal? And my comment was that they aren't satisfied yet. They want to continue to learn and to grow. And that's, like I said, that's what I kind of got from you. How has that helped play with your learning experience at Walt Disney and being an animator there?
It helped a lot, especially just sort of a globally in storytelling. Like that Ken Fountain class I took was more on sequence work and telling a good story. Like coming back to that entertainment value. It's like a couple shots together could move really well, but at the end of the day, if you're not interested, it doesn't matter. And so if you can tell a story in a really appealing way, or get people hooked, I think that's what's important. And so just trying to I was really taking advantage of the downtime. And so when you're not in the middle of this crunch where you're just trying to get shots done and you have some time to kind of breathe, then it's, I was just trying to keep that input coming in where I could still practice and get better.
That's very cool. How was it doing dailies, Joey and Rosco particularly, not having a whole lot of experience prior to Walt Disney Animation Studios? How was it going in showing dailies?
Terrifying.
Yeah.
Deeply disturbing to my very soul. Because, you're showing your dribblings that you kind of know isn't up to scratch to, I guess, the best animators in the world. And it's always unpleasant, but I don't know, you kind of get numbed to it after a few sessions.
All right.
Well, it's something I
more than
feel my knees knocking when I'm waiting to be shown.
Well, you, Larry, were talking about peer pressure in workshops. You can multiply that several times.
Especially when your shot is up against someone who...
Yeah, and I just remember, it's probably one of my first showings is coming right after Chad Sellers.
Funny enough, the first shot I ever had went directly on from Clay Catis, who was the head of animation on Tangled. So that was exactly the
What about you, Daniel? Like you mentioned, you'd done a stint with Rhythm and Hughes. Did you guys do dailies there beforehand, or were they weeklies, or how did that work?
Rhythm had such a bigger pipeline because it was a visual effects house, so they have their own internal animation supervisors and who would answer to their animation director. And then once you got that far up the chain, then they would show the client side animation director and then the director of the show. And so there were very many gates to get through. And so you would end up showing your shot and maybe an approval level of like 4 tiers before you got some notes. And so it was very separated. Here at Disney, though, it's very integrated. Like even in rounds, we'll have our animation director there with us who can, give us some decisive feedback. Rounds are basically everything but the actual director. And so it's less about the acting and performance and like more about really nailing that appeal. And so because you're so close to the directors and supervisors, like the animation directors and supervisors, you're getting feedback that is like straight from the horse's mouth and only one level of approval, which is pretty amazing.
So you were able to get a lot quicker. How did that help in your progression of your shots?
Oh, man. Well, the faster you have to go back to blocking to make it awesome, the better. No, I'm kidding. It's not always that bad. But yeah, like you know if you're on the right track, like right away. You don't have to worry about getting through gates before you realize that it's the wrong way to go. Because it's so immediate, you're able to get back on track and get the shot out faster.
Very cool. This is a question, I guess, for each of you here. What was it like going into a studio like Walt Disney Animation Studios that is one of the top studios for feature animation and with such a rich history?
What do you mean one of the top?
Well, I have to be agnostic for this here. So, okay, for this show, the top, going into a studio like that and now getting shots. I mean, what was it like going in there maybe your first day or first weeks?
Well, yes, I had kind of a soft landing coming into the talent development program because you really, it's kind of similar to Animate. You're working on assignments that are unrelated to the current production. So we were doing little tests with, prep and landing characters and Tangled characters. And then we each were assigned a mentor, and then we had 3 months of just working on those. And then after that, we started getting siphoned production work, and we all initially started on crowds and then moved on to shots. So it was kind of a pretty easy ride. I feel Rosco has a dark tail left, maybe.
Real quick, I want to stay on that for a second. How was it, though, transitioning just even mentally from working on, you say, assignments that you were, for lack of a better term, they didn't really matter as far as production, to now actually, hey, here's your first shot. This is actually going to be for the movie. How was that mentally?
There was just all these little aspects of animation that I hadn't really conceived of before I arrived. It's this extremely subtle appeal in not only sort of facial shapes and posing, but also in movement. That was just something that, I don't know, beyond sort of tracking arcs and making sure your curves look nice, it wasn't really something that I had comprehended before. So I feel a lot of those 3 months were spent just working out like what makes the characters appealing, and even the slightest nudging of an eyelid control can send a character looking horrifying, especially with Rapunzel. Her enormous bubble eyes.
So those 3 months were actually able to kind of get you honed down in the Disney way, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And the things that they focus on, kind of the simplicity and clarity of ideas, and just that kind of thing. And I think it was great. I mean, it was perfect. I don't know, I just felt so lucky every day. It was completely insane. And to answer your question more just about walking into the studio and then even being brought to LA to work at Disney was completely mind-blowing. I felt like I didn't deserve any of this, and I'd have some karmic payback sometime.
So transitioning to an actual shot for the production wasn't as mind-rattling.
Yeah, and I mean, it didn't really prepare you just for the, not brutality, but just the lack of sugarcoating of notes. Because especially when you're working with like a nice mentor, really friendly guy who you become friends with, they still kind of really hide the criticisms behind layers of marshmallowy deliciousness. So but so when you show in dailies, it's not just like, oh, looks great, oh, I like it. It's just sort of, this is what is wrong, and then please do this differently. So the first dailies were definitely extremely rattling to my bones and marrow. So.
What about you, Daniel? You said that you didn't go in through that 3 months of apprenticeship there, straight hire. How was that different?
Oh man, it was brutal. So when I started on. We were doing some cycles. It was for Ralph. We were doing. I had to do some bug cycles, like getting the side bugs. Like what would it look like for them to run, and then what would it look like for them to fly. And I did like a couple of the walk cycles of the random people in Game Central Station, and then immediately after that, they tell us we're gonna get some shots, like some real shots. I'm like, oh, cool. I'm thinking I'm gonna get something that's like a take, or some character in the background, like something. Yeah, helicopter shot of like some characters far away. No, the first shot I get is Felix in the jail, where he's like, please let me out, and then he tries to wreck it. And it's like a close-up.
He fixes it.
Yeah. He's getting fed.
That was in the trailer, right?
Yeah, it was a trailer too. And that was my first shot, and I was so just like destroyed by doing it that like I started off using the wrong controls. I didn't have that grace period with the rigs as much, and so and the crowd characters don't really care too much about like the really fine intricate details, but as soon as you get like a hero character and you have a close up with them, the first time I showed it was just like everyone was kind of confused, and it was just nerve wracking. But I got some special attention from the supervisor after. He's like, I'll talk to you about how we control the characters, and some quick lessons later, and then they gave me quite the spanking. I hit the ground running pretty hard.
Well, I remember that shot. It turned out good, so obviously it paid off.
Yeah, see, you don't have any choice but to get better. Like when they start you here, it's there's no sink or swim. Like everyone swims.
It's good to plummet to your death as early as possible.
yeah, basically. I remember Clay talking to me. He came and he's like, hey, so there's no sink or swim here. Like we're all in this together, and we're all gonna be doing amazing work on this show. Like his words of inspiration were so amazing, and so it's nice to know that you have that support of people here who will really give you that hardcore just smackdown and make sure your work just is as good as it possibly can be.
But everyone is super nice, so it's not like
some nicer than others.
Let's put it that way. And Daniel mentioned how here you have this sort of immediate response, immediate feedback, only one level, only one gate to pass, and so on. But it's a very narrow gate with very sharp thorns. So I want to say is that the sort of the level of pickiness, the level that the work has to be on is far beyond. It's just a whole another level. So you get picked apart for everything.
What about you, Rosco? Let's hear your entry into the atmosphere over at Walt Disney.
Well, it was obviously the dailies and that aspect of it was terrifying, and that it's really hard, and it's all sort of mental. It's all in your head basically. I mean, animation is pretty much everything is always in your head, but so it's really hard. It was hard, but it was also fantastic because you mentioned the history and everything, and obviously I've never been here before, and it's just the climate here is perfect, and it was springtime when I was starting, so it's like sort of this idyllic environment basically, and then you go out to walk on the main lot, and you have I think the original building from Hyperion Studio where they made Snow White. I think they've actually disassembled and moved that building over here. So that first building, when the first feature film was made, is here on this lot, and the brick buildings where animation used to be are still there. They're pretty much the same as they were, although they're occupied with different departments now. But you can walk these corridors, and there's a ton of shots on the walls from Nine Old Men. There's you can still go down into where the morgue used to be, the corridors beneath that connects where they used to shuffle the shots from the animation to other departments and so on. So it's like really sort of a surreal I don't know. It's just fantastic. You know,
They've got a Starbucks.
That's all you need, huh?
I no comment. It's the equivalent of having a Starbucks shop within the Forbidden City in Beijing. You know, I'm just kidding. But no, it's for us that are in animation. It's it's a mecca. You know, so
It's incredible. And there's the entire Disney archive where there's a bunch of archivists, whatever, sort of working away with white gloves on, sort of, and they're translating every single old Disney drawing that were used before they were painted, and they're digitizing them on the computer, so that library is available for you. So you can literally just open up any pencil test from any of the old Disney films at the moment.
That's way cool.
Which I think is kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you were kind of, Rosco, as you mentioned, kind of thrown into the heat of battle there. How was that transition for you?
Well, it was tough. Yeah, it was, there's not much to really say about it. It was just tough. Because you go from, like Joy was saying, like all your experiences from people that were nice to you, and you get constructive feedback, but it's all, you're a student, and, it's just one context. And then you come here, and basically the first thing I've done is just a short run cycle on one of the characters, and then it was a shot with 7 characters, so yeah, I mean, it's survival. Like, you turn into survival mode, and you learn as you go, but it's just it's hard to explain, really, when you have to be in that situation.
Well, was there any tricks or anybody that you latched onto that you kind of used to make that adjustment to keep swimming?
Well, the supervisors are there to really help you through. But this is, a little thing for all the students, right? It's, the priorities of your mentor and your supervisor, like your mentor when you were a student and your supervisor here, are completely different. They have different purpose. So yes, your shot has to be the best it can be, but it also has to be done. So the sort of direction that you're getting is not necessarily geared towards the learning. It's more geared towards getting the job done. So the learning that you're doing, you're sort of doing on the fly, but it's really work. Once you get into the heat of production, there's not a lot of time that you can experiment or make a whole lot of mistakes and so on. And some mistakes that you make, you just have to live with. You just have to make the shot work and move forward. So things can be overwhelming at times, because the amount of information that is at your disposal, like Joey said, we have what used to be a MORC is now Animation Research Library, which we have internally online, and we can pull up stuff. But even better than that for us is like every shot from basically Tangled onto Hero to Ralph, and now Frozen, and Prep and Landing 2, and it's like every shot, every stage of it, everything is there. Like, we can see the blocking passes, the splining,
wow.
Like whatever you pick. So the amount of lectures that have accumulated here over the period of the last 30, 40 years probably, which we also have at our fingertips, it's just a lot of information. And so most of the learning has happened by watching what some of the best guys we have here are doing, and just trying to sort of pick little tricks and little things that you see, like you start stepping through their shots frame by frame, and you kind of look at what they're doing, and it's just as much as you can, and then you get on back to your shot, and it's just like you just have to go,
So did you find that those kind of gave you some inspiration then to keep kind of plugging away and to keep swimming?
It's both intimidation and inspiration at the same time. So it's I mean, if you're taught one thing, you're taught humility when you come here, and like within the first 24 hours, basically.
Nice.
Because there's another thing I just want to say now is we have this animation community, and not just iAnimate, but just what's known to people on the internet, online, through other schools, through whatever, forums or conferences, whatever. So there's a number of really great animators that everyone knows about and so on. And then you come here and there's like a bunch of people you've never heard of, and they're just like you can't imagine.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like difficult to imagine. You frame through a film like Tangled. I mean, I did obviously a couple of years ago all the time, and these shots are amazing. And then when you come in, you see these animators creating this quality of work week after week, really quickly, and it's just insane. It's just mind blowing. And most of them I've never even heard of. Sort of more than half the crew just kind of.
Yeah, and a lot of these people, really came into their own here, whether they started 15, 20 years ago, and they were here the whole time, and no one's heard about them outside of the studio, except for people that, they don't expose themselves. You come here, and you don't know what to expect, and then you're just like, bam, not into this, it's like just like, it's a light year away from where I am. It's just, so it's your thought humility, like within a very short period of time. It's just, you want to go back home, cry for a little bit, then come back, regroup, and then sort of attack. So it's very good.
What about you, Daniel? Was there anybody there that you kind of clung on to that you felt like, hey, this is a good mentor that's going to help me get through, or were you signed one? How did that work for you?
Yeah, my supervisor, like my immediate supervisor on Ralph, when I was doing that Felix shot, I was just crying. Like, he was my lifeline, basically, just to help me out and get me straight. But I think a lot of people, like almost everyone here, it's really easy to make friends with. So because there's not a whole lot of egos. People don't walk around being like, I'm the best animator ever, don't talk to me. Like, everyone has that mentality of like they can learn something. So I think everyone's at this humble stage enough to just be able to share. And I could walk into anyone's office and just say like, hey, could you look at my shot and just tell me what's up? And everyone, I don't think there would be anyone who, maybe like a couple of people were like really busy at that moment, but they would, if they had a minute, they'd totally help out. Yeah, but that was a fun little project of mine I did toward the beginning of Ralph when I started, was just walk into random people's office and introduce myself by saying like, hey, could you give me some notes on my shot? And just seeing like, what kind of feedback you get from different people, because everyone sees something different too. So you learn a lot just doing that. I mean, for me at least, like if I look at my student reel that got me the job here and the work that I did on Ralph, it's light years different.
That was actually another question I had. How was it transitioning from working on your own stuff, your own time, with your own self-imposed deadlines and things of that nature, to now actually working for a company that you actually have to get that stuff on a particular schedule?
Yeah, I mean, just imagine getting like those assignments in iAnimate and then having to turn them around finished Disney quality in a week and a half.
Well, I mean, I think that's one of the draws of a school like iAnimate, is that you are actually effectively showing this work that you're doing not only to your immediate mentor, but to countless other students and, well, Jason Ryan, of course, and all the other mentors possibly. So there's that sort of pressure about kind of wanting, I don't know, either to impress them or to just not seem like an imbecile in front of them. So I think that's one of the biggest kind of pressures at the moment. But yeah, so what for me, how my work improved, I don't know, I feel like because I was in crowds for a few months, it just became the case where just learning how to forget about blocking and then just change tack and try a new idea for the shot, because this is, it's not what Rosco was saying earlier, is that this isn't your movie and you're making exactly what the director wants to see. So, I mean, that's one of the hard things, especially when you're having to reblock the same shot multiple times to get the exact right thing the director's hoping for. And to be able to do that, I don't think I'd have been capable of a couple of years ago. It's just, I was easy to just become very set on what I was doing. So.
Has your workflow changed at all, being in the studio?
For me, not really. I don't know. I'm a bit of a bohemian animator. I don't really use much in the way of tools, and I'm just kind of purely visual. I don't really even use the graph editor that much. So I don't know. So.
But I mean, as far as, did you start out in blocking in Stepped, or have you always blocked in Spline, or?
Yeah, so I kind of try to plan a lot every shot, and then get my, I guess, signposts ready, and then I'd try and straight ahead animate through them, or at least do it in a way where I'm kind of throwing down information, because I feel I kind of like to see motion happening and then work from there. So I would, in step blocking, just get out a quick idea of the shot and then refine. And I think that's especially kind of embraced here, because what is important is your ideas and your acting. So just if you can get it around and show them what you're thinking in a couple of days, then that's a lot better than if you weren't to do that.
What about you, Daniel? Has your workflow changed being there at Disney?
Yeah, a lot.
Okay. How so?
Right. Well, in terms of trying to just get to the finished product faster, you have to like reblock a lot. Like if you block out an idea and it's not the direction that they want to go, you have to be prepared to just sort of throw it out and do it again. And so just getting quicker with getting the blocking down, like getting those storytelling flows enough where it's clear enough what your idea is and where you're going and how your mechanics are playing out. So like putting a lot of upfront detail is kind of like the big change for me, just being able to get it turned around quickly.
What about you, Rosco?
I don't know. I think I need to sit down and think about it for a week or something to see how this is all played out. I just want to say one thing first. Step, spline, it doesn't matter at all. It just, whatever you're quick with. Some of our fastest people here work in Stepped, or actually the fastest person we have works in Stepped, and several, following fastest people, I guess, worked in Spline blocking. So that absolutely makes no difference as long as it's something you're proficient with. We, again, another idiosyncrasy of Disney here, we tend to show on Stepped, but we have tools that help us shoot splines in Stepped mode. So even if you work in Stepped, you can always shoot it on 2s, 3s, or 4s, or just on keys, and show it in Stepped. Showing in Stepped is good because it takes away, like it puts the important poses up on the screen and then lets your brain interpret everything in between. So you can show work earlier than you would if you were in Spline, because you don't quite have to work out mechanics to be perfect. And showing on 2s or 3s or 4s is very forgiving. So that's something we do a lot. So regardless of what your blocking method or your workflow is, we always tend to show on 2s or 3s. I would say vast majority of shots get shown like that. Every now and then, very rarely, we do show reference, only special occasions. And it's not like a rule against it or anything like that. It's just how it happens.
And usually that's kind of towards the end of production, and it's to the jurisdiction of, I guess, the sequence supervisor, there was a couple of subtle acting sequences on Ralph, and they just wanted the whole of the sequence acted and referenced before anyone started animating, just to get the whole flow of it. So occasionally reference can be used in a sort of macro way like that.
How heavy is reference used at the studio? Everyone pretty much uses it?
I think I only know one person for sure that doesn't use the reference.
Okay.
And he's probably the best animator we have. Pretty much everyone else uses the reference.
Uh-huh.
I've never been unhappy with a shot I shot reference for.
I've never been happy with the shot of mine ever.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
What about you, Joey? Reference-wise, you shoot a lot of reference?
I must admit, I don't really use it much. It just kind of, it really depends on the shot, and it really depends on how quickly the shot itself, sort of how quickly I can envision it,
So what's your workflow then? Give me a couple examples of your workflow.
I can talk you through what happened on my current shots.
Yeah.
I've got a pretty long one at the moment, which is big and exuberant, and it's with a little character who it's kind of impossible to shoot reference for. He's sort of small and cartoonish.
Okay. So what was your workflow for that one?
Yeah, so I spent 3 or 4 days planning and thinking about the shot and thinking about what was important for it, and the typical things where I'd write out the kind of words and pick the gradients of intensity and where to focus, where to spend my money, I would say, animation-wise. So in this shot, he's interacting with a subtle female character. So then I just quickly laid out with quick sort of signposts what I wanted to do with this shot, and I blocked out the dominant character, which was this little guy running around, and I just did a really quick pass of just my ideas and just very basic, just lip sync and face shapes, and once I'd got him all working, then I brought in the other character and then got her emotion, and I spent more time sort of thinking through the physicality and when muscles would be firing and just sort of feeling the, not rigidity, but the tensity of flesh as opposed to this little flailing guy. And then, so I got that all together, and I did another just pass of just making stuff more appealing and just pushing timing and just having more fun with the breakdowns. And then I showed in Dailies and had to reblock most of it.
Okay, I was kind of wondering as you're kind of going through this process, I'm going, okay, when do you start showing that? So
but I mean, honestly, I did that. I blocked out the whole, it was a 350 frame shot, and I just rushed through it, and I blocked the whole thing in a day, and then I spent another day just kind of refining what I'd done. Because I know there's something I feel that when, especially when characters are coming from either layout or a T-pose, you get more pleased with your own motion because it's coming from somewhere so plain. So I feel like you just got to get, I always feel that like it's just a canvas, and as soon as you start getting stuff there, it's much easier to retain that sort of perception of it, and it's much easier to see what the audience is seeing if you're not spending too much time on it and deadening your eyes. So then I had the shot issued on Friday, and I showed first in rounds to the supervisors on Wednesday, and then they gave me a couple of notes, which I did, and I showed in Dailies, and then I've been kind of reworking sections since then to get it to what the director hopes for.
So when would you use reference? Give me an example of a shot.
On was a extreme close-up with a male character just saying a very subtle, direct line. So I shot reference, and I know for me, it took me a while to I think that's one of the things I'm scared of with reference, is that I kind of lose the point of the shot, and I get too pleased with little acting beats I find interesting as opposed to what would work specifically for the shot. So for me, it took me a while to learn how to look at reference and kind of paraphrase it in a way. So with this shot, I just filmed myself for half an hour just performing this line, and I went through and I just tried to pick what felt most right, and then sometimes I'd just watch my reference in continuity with other shots around it just to feel like if it could fit into the movie. Then I'd follow it pretty closely, but sort of I'd just always be looking to push facial shapes and spacing and timing. That's kind of how I do it.
What about you, Daniel? Reference-wise, do you use it a lot?
Oh yeah, as much as possible. Just because I don't know, for some reason I keep getting these really mechanical shots with characters that are doing a lot of physical things. So for me, working out the mechanics ahead of time is key for me to just be able to get it approved. So I shoot reference as much as possible. Like right now I'm doing a shot where a character is carrying another one, and I could probably do that without shooting reference, but I would miss out on a lot of these little subtle nuances and kind of like how carrying weight changes a character's gait, things like that. And those differences are pretty subtle. Unless you're intimately familiar with it, then you can just recall it. I'm not that good at just watching people walk around with carrying weight. So seeing myself do it in a video camera is a lot better. So yeah, I use reference as much as possible just to get the realism in there.
Mm.
Who did you carry for your reference?
Yeah, that's what my question was.
I got to carry my girlfriend. It was awesome.
Nice. Hey, honey, I need you. Come here.
Exactly. Reference is great for that.
Now, Rosco, I know you use reference quite well. How would you say, or any advice on how you interpret your reference? Because you're able to do that pretty well. How do you do that?
Well, Things have changed a little bit.
Okay.
No, I do. I should have referenced that's true, but you can't substitute a 235-pound guy for a, I don't know, 140-pound girl. So yes, I've like Daniel. I've been also getting more kind of actiony or more sort of mechanical shots. For some of them, I've shot partial reference. For some of them, I haven't shot reference at all. And but yes, in general, I would tend to shoot a lot of reference. How do you interpret it?
You do a good job at that. So, I mean, what are some of the things that you're looking at the reference for to kind of start extrapolating it?
Well, I mean, you have to you look at the extremes of body parts, and you kind of look at what's happening in the hips.
Extremes of movements too. So like the hips rotate, kind of like rotate wide. It's like as far as they go, and then they start reversing direction. Like that extreme would be a pose. Things like that.
But it's not copying poses, obviously, because the weight doesn't transfer, the timing of it doesn't work, and so on. I think when the character is obviously proportionate to you, more proportionally similar, or weight-wise more similar to you, then you can really, the timing actually from your reference might actually work, and you might follow it more literally if the action allows that. But I think in general, you just have to kind of figure out like what is happening. I think torso is very important. So you figure out obviously your feet, the timing of your feet, then how the hips react to that, like what happens in the torso as the hips move, and so on. So it's I usually dissect it. I don't I can't comprehend the body as a whole, like in one, like what the 2D guys used to do, actually Dave used to, break it up in parts as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they would even do body parts in different colors and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's looking at the extremes of hips and torso and then trying to find a relationship between, sort of understanding how the body parts are reacting to each other. It's kind of hard to explain
over a podcast.
I remember Zach Parrish. He did a demo for us. He's one of the head of animations on the next movie, and he put it in such a simple way. He said, "All I do when I look at my reference is I just go every few frames and just look at what's changing and why it's changing as well."
Okay. So Rosco, what would you do for your shots now where you don't shoot reference for? How do you plan those out? And
well, it's like the only reason why I didn't shoot the reference for it is because I didn't have to plan a whole lot. It was more of a sort of a straight ahead thing. So it's not, it's.
That sounds like a trap.
It happened, it just happened that I've done that shot without shooting the reference. But okay. It's not like I don't have a method for it.
Every time I try that, I just get so much trouble. It's going to straight ahead this, no problem.
No, but this shot, got approved. So,
good job.
Yeah, but I now have to redo it. But it's not because something's changed and the whole sequence is gone and redo and whatnot. So, yeah, that just happened for that shot. In general, I do tend to. I shoot a lot of partial reference as well, because we're not. I mean, obviously, maybe some of us are really good at shooting the reference, but there's muscle memory and stuff like that, like dancers. You show them a routine, and they just only have to repeat it 3 times, and then they can do it 100 times perfectly. We can't. I can't think of everything at the same time when I'm shooting the reference. So, maybe my sort of main body motion would be correct, but then my hands or my arms or something else is not quite working the way I want it to. So I would just maybe shoot a little segment of that reference so I can analyze, get the arm hand gesture the way I want it, shoot the reference, it looks the way I want it, and then sort of analyze what it's doing and then apply it into a body in a different sort of pose. So I do a lot of these partial references as well. I'm in a sort of a little readjustment of my workflow.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was asking earlier. So yeah, I want to transition a little bit here to Wreck-It Ralph. Obviously, all 3 of you guys worked on that one.
Apart from getting robbed at the Oscars.
Yeah. You know, I really, really like the film. We had a chance, actually, our first interview podcast, we had Doug Bennett who worked on that one. But one of the things that Doug had mentioned was that wasn't going to be quite sure if the audience was going to think it was going to be just a game reference fest or anything along that lines. And one of the things I liked about the film is how balanced it was with the game reference, which made it a lot of fun in that regards, but still had a great story and very fun and easy to follow. How is it working on a film like that? You know, here you're at Disney, and they're starting to make some strides with, you know, like Bolt, and then eventually with Tangled, where it really started feeling like, hey, we're back in this game as far as with 3D is concerned. What was it like working on this film here at Walt Disney? What was on the line, and how did that feel?
Amazing. Are you kidding? Like, this is the new Disney Renaissance. We're back. So it's working on a film. I mean, especially for me, like walking into here and then seeing it, just kind of like one of the early screenings. Man, I grew up on all these games. And so I'm 30 and like Ralph's 30 and he's talking about like, I hate my job and I just, want to get some recognition. Like I felt like, man, this film was made for me. I connected to it so much and so hard that I loved it. Every little bit that I got to just do on it just felt like such a privilege. I haven't had a better time in this industry.
Did there feel like there was any extra stress having just done really well with Tangled, or did there feel like there was a little bit of wind in your sail because of the success of Tangled?
There was certainly both. I mean, there was definitely pressure because Disney's back. So Tangled was, I think, pretty amazing. And sort of, I don't know who I talked to recently, but in hindsight, I think Tangled is probably one of the best movies.
We had some CG, We had some leeway though, because we weren't trying to do another Tangled.
Right.
We were doing like video game world, so we got to experiment with styles and all that. So we weren't necessarily trying to reproduce something that had already happened. So that gave us a little bit of
not in terms of style, but certainly in terms of quality.
That's where it was like, man, we got to be on top.
There was pressure for. Because the studio is going on to like making a movie a year, and we need to have successes for this to really happen. And that was the pressure. And there is really, I don't think anyone puts a higher pressure on us than ourselves. Like, I mean, the animation department here is so. It's not. I don't know. I have no experience with other studios, so I don't know how it works there, but. Here, it's not like, okay, so we got to make this movie. Like we need to push ourselves like beyond, like it's a constant pressure forward. And it could be Ralph, it could be Frozen, it could be whatever. It's just a constant pressure forward, or always looking to surpass what has been done. So yeah, there's that competition with oneself type of pressure, but the talent's amazing. And I have to say, Jan Lee, she was a co-writer on Ralph, and she's a co-director now and a co-writer on, or maybe just a writer. I'm not. She's a co-director, definitely. I don't know. She also writes Frozen, but I'm pretty sure there are other writers as well. She and the director, who was also amazing on Ralph, they know what they're doing so well.
Yeah, I feel Rich Moore was a dream of a first director.
Absolutely, yeah.
He was amazing, and he was very clear what he wanted, but he was also, I don't know, he was really willing to allow you to invent and bring new stuff to shots. I think he just really wanted it to be as rich as possible, the movie. Pun maybe intended, I don't know. But
for us as animators, it wasn't just his competency, which is immense, but it's also that he was so, he made us feel good about what we were doing.
Yeah.
Because he would have, I mean, this is what I heard, there's directors that, they're always kind of, under stress to do something. You never know if what you've done is really good or not, but with Rich was like, if you struck a chord, he'd have a really genuine reaction to it, and you'd come out like $1 million out of that daily session.
Nice.
Seriously. So, and I thought that was really important. It's like, that was one of my lifelines. Those rare few times that I had him react like that, don't know why, but so I think that he was extremely best first director you can imagine.
I think so, and I just think the best first film I could have wished to work on, because just the parade of different styles and how, it's a subtle movie. There's some amazing subtle work with Ralph, but on the whole, it's kind of broader than Tangled.
Right.
It's a lot more about getting graphic shapes with him. There's a lot more about summarizing John C. Reilly's performance as opposed to getting in extremely tiny little details. So there's something about that was a good gearing up for Frozen, which is a lot more heavily reference-based and a lot more subtle.
Yeah, that was one of the things I really liked with Ralph was the different styles of animation. I even had a buddy who's not in the industry at all who specifically mentioned that. And so I think when you get somebody who's not in the industry recognizing that, you've done something really well. How do they hand out shots there? How do you get a shot?
Well, you wake up one morning and you
Okay.
open.
Yeah, there's no fanfare. Just
You get your shot with shotgun.
Yeah, you get your shot with shotgun.
it's a little like a website thing, and it doesn't alert you. You just occasionally log onto it, and then there might occasionally be new shots for you.
How do they determine who gets what?
Yeah, well, there's a casting session every week, basically, that happens behind closed doors. And that's where the Soup's animation director and production supervisor look at what's in the inventory, what the plan is, and then they start see people that are free, that are coming off another shot. So they basically have an inventory of shots that need to be done. They have an inventory of people that are coming available, and then they try to match the best to their abilities. We have, I missed this part in Ralph because I started late in the production, but during the pre-production, we have explorations of characters, and even though the story is always developing and changing, we have those early screenings, early storyboards, and so on. So there's always this invitation for us to, if we want to explore, if we feel very strongly about a certain piece of animation, certain shot, certain character, and so on, we can start not auditioning per se, but we can start exploring them in the pre-production period, and if our tests sort of come out okay, and if there's a little bit of preference that we can express, and from what I can see, they tend to do everything they can to accommodate what people's preferences are, because obviously it's in everyone's interest to, we get the shots that we're more interested in, we're probably going to perform better. But there's going to be like really, really important shots that glue the story together, that like key performances and so on, that obviously are going to go to the best people for that kind of stuff. It's like these are shots that they don't mess with. There's no room for failure there.
It feels like they do try and build inertia of animators. It's kind of dependent on how well you're doing with your current shots, or just how easily you're coping with them, what you get next. So you can really just kind of keep going. I've seen a couple of people who've just sort of started and then just kept doing really well in their shots and just getting more and more stuff, and now are being assigned sort of huge sequences.
We do usually get assigned short sequences whenever the thing is, though, they're always limited with either what's in the inventory or the people coming up. So they don't have a complete liberty to cast whoever they want on whatever they want. So it's all
who's available.
That's right, and what shots are coming available, because we get our inventory from the layout, and layout's doing everything they can to accommodate the changes in the story, stuff like that. So they do their best to give us as much of a sequence type of work where we get consecutive shots together to match our strengths or preferences and so on. It doesn't always work. There's a lot of factors, come into those decisions, who gets what. So I've generally been happier.
Was the studio surprised at the success of Ralph?
I don't think so.
No.
They kind of felt like they knew it.
We loved the movie.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it was a pretty short thing. Obviously it wasn't early on, before it was done.
There was a lot of energy boosting hype filtering in from the ether. A lot of bloggers latching onto it, and it kind of I think it did capture a lot of people's interest very early on. So
we were like, as it started shaping itself up, I don't think anyone was doubtful of success. I mean, obviously we could have been surprised and it could not have been a success, but I think everyone will be shocked because we didn't have any doubting Toms or anything like that. I mean, the movie was just, the hype, like Joey said, was just there, and they've hit a gaming conference and Comic-Con, and trailer came out, and just the feedback from those was just overwhelmingly positive. Yeah. So from that point on, it was just we all knew it's going to do well. We just didn't know how well it's going to do. So
now, what was the vibe in the studio once you guys kind of started seeing that it was doing really well?
The occasional John Lasseter speech.
Oh yeah. Cupcakes and donuts. I mean, we were really happy about it. Everyone was talking about it.
But also, there's another thing. It's like I think Daniel mentioned before. This is another renaissance of Disney. So it's the atmosphere, like the general atmosphere, reflects that. This place is brimming with, I would say, enthusiasm right now. Regardless if it's Ralph or Frozen or whatever.
Yeah, it's a really good time to be here.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been in the rut for a long time, and now is like just
the best place to be.
That's right. And
great management and really good aspirations broadly for the studio. It's just really exciting to be here.
I guess that's kind of why I asked, because, like I said, I really liked Bolt a lot. That was probably one of the first ones that really started kind of gaining some momentum, but maybe didn't do as well as it maybe could have. But then when you start hitting Tangled, and that one was a real big success, and then when you start seeing this here, you're kind of feeling like, okay, we're on now, and kind of coming from an athletic background, that's a huge boost to not your ego, but just your ability to perform like you want to.
Well, because I think what's interesting is no one really expected Tangled to do well. I think there was a sort of certain wariness before it came out, and it made insane amount of money. So I think this is kind of the sophomore album.
Right. I guess that's what I'm getting at. Yeah, when you've done well on your freshman album, and now your sophomore, you're going, okay, this wasn't just a one-hit wonder. We're back in this. What do you guys enjoy most about animation right now? And it's very broad, but having work at Disney right now.
Doing it at Disney.
Uh-huh.
That's my favorite part about it right now.
I would have to agree.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine a better way to learn this craft and to be immersed in it than learning among these people and this pool of talent. It is unrivaled.
Yeah, to me, the thing that most excites me is just the incredible variety of the profession. Every week we're all animating something completely different. We're all exploring a different emotional state or even a different style of animation completely. And I just feel there's so much room to grow, and it's just a really meritocratic place where it's just all about how proficient you are at your work. So it's just like that kind of thing that really excites me. How it's just this endless ability to improve in the different facets of it. So,
was there any things that you guys had kind of taken away with you from iAnimate that kind of helped in your tool bag there at Walt Disney? Some nuggets that you got from your instructors, or? Yeah,
actually, like the amount of polish that I learned from Jamal was super key, because it's kind of easy to miss like little nuancey details. But if you had, like, I had an instructor who was like, always pay attention to the eyes. Like, everyone's watching the eyes the whole time, and so like if the eyes are perfect, then it's like the mouth can be a little loose, the feet can be a little loose, but like the eyes got to be perfect. And so like I take that in every shot I do, is like make sure those eyes are like the arcs of the pupils and everything is working perfectly. Little tips like that helped a lot.
Rosco, what about you?
Oh, pretty much everything. Everything I know I learned there, basically.
Right.
So it's it's
that's the obvious answer. Like, I wouldn't be.
Well, I don't know. I can't point like one thing. Obviously, I can't take one thing out. It's just like everything I learned there. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't an iAnimate. That's
I can say
for sure.
Too, yeah.
And
I can say that as well.
Yeah, so it's like everything that I did or didn't learn, or every mistake that I made at iAnimate, every success that I had, like every step I made is what brought me here. So it's Like I can't. There's no key. That's like everything is just everything is important, and everything counts. So
but it is in the eyes.
it's all in the eyes.
What about you, Joey?
I can't say it's anything
Specific?
Yeah, but just broadly as a way of teaching, just the how various ones of my instructors would pull up old shots they worked on and then talk through what notes they were given and then show how they polished and what they were thinking with each decision. And that was something you kind of, you don't really get anywhere else unless you're at a feature studio, just getting that. And I think that is the best way to just transform your mind into a feature thinking machine, getting just seeing how a professional would approach a shot and the problems raised by the shot. So
Okay, last question here, and this goes for each one of you guys. What advice would you guys give for those who are wanting to get into features and work at a studio like Walt Disney Animation Studios?
It's work hard. Like it'll be the hardest work you've ever done. Just to get your craft to the point where we could use it, and just don't give up.
I don't know, this is just from my perspective, but don't try and be an animator that you think people want to see. Animate the shots that you want to see and that you like the most. And because I think that's what they really look for. I feel like the general standard of animation is insanely high at the moment. It's more about they just want to see your personality and like what trace of humanity you can bring into the next film possibly, or how you can innovate within the framework. So that's what
What about you, Rosco?
Well, definitely, like really work hard. It's going to be a great challenge, that's for sure. Some things are easier said than done, but I think I would say experiment as much as you can, try as many different things as you can, while you can make those mistakes. So basically, fail as much as you can, as soon as you can.
Yeah, don't covet your work. Don't hide your work from people. Just allow people better than you to tell you what is wrong with what you're doing.
Lose that ego now, huh?
Yeah.
That's one of those things that it's easier said than done.
Right. But if you can practice it now before you get into a studio, you're ready, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Very cool. Hey, guys, I really do appreciate this talk here. Partly just as a chance for me to kind of catch up with you guys. It's been a bit, so I really appreciate you guys' time.
For sure.
It was a joy.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much, guys, and look forward to hearing from you next time.
Thanks.
All right.